Welcome, everybody. My name is Alex Pulaski, and we're today joined to a webinar from Farm to Fork, how technology influences, changes, improves, hopefully, the EU supply food system. I'm joined by two distinguished guests, Sylvie Navarrete from SVZ International, and on the other side, Harold Sundmaker from ATB Bremen. Before we start, I would like to provide you with some pointers to provide for an effective maneuvering of this webinar. First, in your interface here in the webinar, you can choose between the speaker view and the gallery view if you look at the view pane. This recording will be shared upon finalization in due time. And lastly, we will have a Q&A session at the end. So please, if you have any questions, please enable your camera if you wish to speak, and our backend team will give you the spotlight. All right. Before we get started, let me provide you with some context about the EU food system. In order to understand the EU food system and the current events, it's important to understand two blocks or two bodies. One is the CAP, CAP, and the other one is the Farm to Fork strategy. The CAP is the Common Agricultural Policy by the European Union, and the other one, the Farm to Fork strategy, is the implementation practical part that basically puts everything into actionable items. So the CAP is, in essence, the regulatory framework and the financial side that supports farmers, among other things. And the Farm to Fork strategy deals with practical issues like food waste and environmental degradation. So in order to really understand the interplay between these two, you might have been familiar in the past weeks and months with the recent farmers' protests, not only in Europe, but also worldwide. So we'll be wondering what caused these incidents. Now, there are at least 5 challenges that can be named to fully understand the farmers' protests. One is environmental sustainability. Another one is climate change. Thirdly, there's food security. Then health concerns, public health. And lastly, the individual situation of farmers or economic viability. It's very important to put everything to perspective and understand that even though we're talking about technology in this webinar, most of these issues are very complex and require to put various actors and bodies as well as perspectives into to connection to fully understand the complexities of these issues. So today we focus on technology, and for that, I would like our speakers to first, well, starting with you, Sylvie, introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your role in your company and also your view on the EU food system.
Thank you, everyone. My name is Sylvie. I work for SPZ. We are an ingredient company. And so we focus on sourcing raw materials, fruit and vegetables from smallholder farmers across Europe to turn into juices, into purees, and other type of ingredients. I think the main focus, as we said, is keeping full transparency and traceability in our supply chain. So we have a very strong relationship with farmers. I think that I'm very proud of being working for a company that puts, that farm-centric approach at the front of everything we do. We have 4 production plants, and I'm the sustainability manager of the company, which means I do not only focus on supporting farmers, but I also focus on the sustainability performance based on sustainability KPIs of our 4 production plants. So we are in the US, Belgium, Spain, Poland, and yeah, I'm super happy to be here and be sharing this time with you.
Thank you very much. Fantastic. Harold, what about you?
Alex, thank you very much for the introduction. My name is Harold Sundmaker. I'm working at the ATB Institute for Applied Systems Technology. We're an applied research institute. We were established in the 90s from the regional government and industrial organizations. And as a non-profit organization, specifically, we're working on EU-funded research, also nationally funded research projects usually in collaboration with a lot of partners, specifically in EU projects, with a lot of European partners. Therefore, also in the background, you see the Data for Food logo. That's one of our current projects we are working on, looking on the data economy for the food system. What can we do with this? Also a topic which we are discussing today. And we as an organization, we are looking a lot on how can we support industry, companies, stakeholders along the food chain as one of our sectors we're addressing on decision support. And what can we really do with information, and which information at which point, also to look on process innovation, also balance somehow the usage of technology, of organization. And at the very end of the day, always the question is, what can we do with the data? Which data is really valuable, and how can we really facilitate that? And in connection to this, specifically most recent development are looking towards data spaces, also very much driven by the European Union and by the European Commission. And therefore, I'm also involved in an open source initiative, Fireware, possibly you heard about that. And also there are a lot of discussions on reuse, not just by data models, but also on functionality and services, specifically when we're talking about open source, and always the classical problem of interoperability when we're talking on IT. Just some words about what we're doing, and we did diverse projects, specifically also in the food chain. I was involved in the last, let's say, 15, 16 years in the food chain in a lot of innovation and research projects with a lot of partners from abroad. So that's very interesting, I must admit.
Yeah, very interesting. Thank you very much for the intros. Now, if we look at the EU food system as it is right now, we can agree that there's a lot of unrest and trouble. A lot of these promises and implementations that we've been following in the recent weeks and months, they are kind of at odds, and they are conflicting because we have too many complexities that are coming into play, and prioritization is not that easy. So if we think about solutioning at the moment, well, from your perspective, what are some strategies or solutions that will come to mind that can really affect these 5 factors, as I mentioned before? Sustainability, environmental sustainability is one. So preventing environmental degradation, loss of biodiversity is one, water pollution. And then maybe we take this point by point. Maybe you start with that one. Is there anything practical, also thinking from the data spaces perspective, that you would feel would bring a lot of quick wins right away?
Maybe I can start. I think there are no quick wins. That's the first thing that I want to approach, especially when you are working in a food system. The food system is a black box. There are so many supply chain stakeholders. What I do want to promote and be aware of is that there are no quick wins. There are hard work, and our supply chain sustainability, efficiency, and resiliency depends on having a holistic approach, but also we need patience with that. We cannot expect changes in over a year. It needs investment and it needs commitment from the industry. So I will say, well, I'll talk from my perspective and from the juice industry perspective. We need a collaborative approach, of course. That's why at my company, we never set up projects only for our perspective. We don't work in silos. We require either a client to work with us and a supplier, and we go even deep down into our supply chain. We require a COP of farmers working with us and a farmer, and a client connected to a farmer. So that's the first thing that I would like to say. When we look into technology driving food production, I will say it's not only about production. Technology is driving everything nowadays. So it's production, like for example, labor shortage is one of the things that we notice. Lack of standardization, interoperability areas, low digitalization at farm level, but it's also storage. Like we see it every day, right? So inadequate facilities, temperature and moisture control, pests and diseases. And then we go into the next step of the supply chain, processing and packaging. I see it every day, damage from handling, variable shape and sizes that we need to adjust. And then in the distribution, we also see the impact of technology. It has so much potential, right? Impacting food freshness, shelf life, the inadequate traceability or transparency systems that we have, the retail part, inefficient supply chain and demand forecasting, promoting imperfect foods as well, that comes from retail, inventory management, important role of technology. And then we can even go to consumption at waste, right? So I'm just moving from one phase on another in a supply chain, consumer education, reverse logistics, under-utilized logistics. So I do see that it's not only in production, this has a huge potential to impact the whole industry across all parts of supply chain. Yeah.
So you would say requires sure, an end-to-end approach. I mean, that's like kind of buzz what he's saying, but bringing together ideally every value chain partner and also co-creation, which would be the future or the, you know.
Absolutely.
What do you think, Harold? What's your stance on this? Would you agree or would you go a different path here?
I would, well, basically agree. So nothing against what Sylvie said. And I would even, let's say, a little bit widening the picture. We are saying from farm to fork. I think the first challenge, what we need to have in mind is that when we're looking on the agricultural side, we have a lot of small organizations. So the farm itself, there we are talking about SME type of organizations. When you're looking at the chain, we have rather an oligopoly from the large manufacturers. We have the large retailers. So we have quite also kind of in size, we have a kind of imbalance of type of organizations. So that's possibly also we need to look at. I would say, I would just possibly also provoke to say, yes, there might be a lot of quick wins.
Okay.
Specifically, if we're looking at single organizations, like if you look on food processing, so you possibly have a new machine, you have new approaches, you can do something inside your business. Also the farm, we were most recently discussing about variable rate application of irrigation, pesticides and stuff like that. And not a majority of farmers are using such technologies. There are a lot of technologies available nowadays. Even when you were visiting the Agritechnica last year in November, the robot on the field is the reality in technology terms. If you're looking on the field itself, you won't see a lot of robots running around using drones to detect something and stuff like that. There are, and we did projects also in the past with a lot of let's say trying to understand what IoT can bring us, because I think we need a little bit to sort a lot of technologies out. I think it's often usually about data. How can we access the data and where we are getting it from? I think we saw over the last 10 to 15 years really a convergence in technology, specifically in hardware. I think we did projects before 15 years where we had concepts asking us, oh yeah, it would be great to have this and that information at that point in the chain. Nowadays, the IoT technologies is in a phase where it's really possible, where you can have, let's say, sensors, where you can have autonomous small systems, which are really working, where you have, let's say, the features, the sensors combined with battery power, combined with usage time, where this is really working. However, at the very end of the day, you still have a lot of different organizations. You can now talk about, yes, precision farming, specifically when we're talking about sustainability. I think it's a little bit this balance. Here we have the ones talking about precision farming. Here you have about organic farming, where possibly both approaches are already kind of approaching each other, because even with precision farming, you can reach somehow getting in the direction. At the same time, we're asking ourselves, what can we do nowadays with AI, with what I said, with data spaces? And there are, you can go the next step, because one thing is to have and I think you can have quick wins inside the organization. If you take the time and the budget, and I think this is very important, you define your objectives, you have the time, and you look what you really want to do. And, but that's one thing. But I think, and specifically, and therefore I think it's where Sylvie was looking at, and I think that's really the improvement over the chain, because we are saying from farm to fork, and that's really the big challenge, because we have a lot of organization. And I think it's even difficult to say it's a chain. It's not a chain, it's a network, because when we are talking about the manufacturing, specifically in Germany, we are talking a lot about manufacturing of machines, of automotive, of cars. There usually you have a very clear network of suppliers and even a chain of suppliers. In food, if there was bad weather on that field, this farmer won't deliver the strawberries. You need to have alternative supplies. There will be usually different sourcing. You have all the year due to the seasonality. You will always have changes, and therefore really the challenge is you cannot say, yes, now I'm implementing an interface, I'm exchanging this information, it works. And you see a lot of innovation projects are doing things with 3-4 organizations. And it works. I would say most of the technology is there, but how can you really assure that if partners are changing, you still have the trust and you still have the technology to exchange this information? And I think at the very end, it little bit boils down to this topic of interoperability, how you will achieve that, how can you really make use of the information? And it's a lot of trust, also the imbalance of power. And one thing is the technology topic. The other thing is really the trust topic, how people are really working together. How are they trusting each other? What will the other organization do with my data? Who will really exploit the data when we're talking about AI? How they will really, let's say, this will influence possibly the prices, because at the very end of the day, it's also people being nervous about their quality, about their price. And there are really new challenges at the horizon. Therefore, I would say there's a bunch of technology every year, new things for the single organization. But with a network of organizations, we are experiencing quite different challenges, which are, I think, from top down, the European Commission is now looking at that. With data spaces, with really collaboration, doing not just the classical standardization way, but also about open source initiatives. But well, we are still have a bunch of challenges to work on.
So I can hear you're full with ideas, both of you. So maybe we dig a little deeper into this. I'm very intrigued by interoperability. What would you think if we define interoperability as the ability to overcome this heterogeneous landscape of different standards and make them work together? What do you think, maybe starting this time again with Harold, how can we achieve that and then bring all these very diverse bodies together?
Well, you know, the old saying is, if you have 5 standards, you have no standard. However, when we're talking about a standard, I think we need to be very clear. We have, on the left-hand side, we have a lot of systems, technology, whatever. On the right-hand side, the same thing, proprietary things. In the middle, you have like a sheet of paper, something in between what you call standard. And then everybody fiddles from left and right to bring things together. And of course, it works somehow. But the problem is, if you have now different standards, if the people are not really joining forces, it's anyway getting a little bit problematic. Even then, the question is how detailed the standard is, how much implementation it requires. So what is it just a specification, or what is it? Because a standard is often just a piece of paper where the people, well, the implementations are possibly not 100% fitting to each other. Then the question we are also always asking ourselves, to which degree we shall also look on open source, on functionality, reuse of functionality, not just saying the data model, but also the reuse of functionality. And we see specifically interoperability. I'm always saying we're just losing money, everybody. Every stakeholder in the chain is just losing money due to lack of interoperability. And if you are implementing it, it just costs money. And also an IT provider really does not earn money with being programming interfaces. It's just effort for everybody. And it's not your core business or a matter of competitiveness. Everybody can implement interfaces.
Right.
But if we agree on using also open source, and therefore I'm also involved in the Fireware initiative. It's an open source initiative, where all the open source, it's free forever. And if you have already this functionality implemented and you can just reuse it. Yesterday I was talking to a colleague at the Anuga FoodTech, and he's implementing software systems.
Right? Anuga is the conference, right?
Yeah. It's a trade fair and a lot of presentations over there. And he was also saying, well, if I have 50% of the software already implemented as open source, then I'm saving 50% of the effort. And at the very end, it feeds back to all the implementation of all the people. And I think we need to look on standards as one thing, and at the same time, what we see, it's how do I treat that? Do I really need to have the perfect standard? Because sometimes we possibly need to be more pragmatic. Yesterday, we also had this discussion of being more pragmatic. And there I see there's also the smart data models initiative. It's also started by Fireware and TM Forum, where also the idea is, if I'm implementing a data model, let's put it on GitHub and make it available. And anybody who would like to use it, the data model, more or less ready for implementation, just use it. It's possibly not perfect, but it's reusable. And I think we need to have a kind of pragmatic approach for that, and not dying in perfect systems.
Yeah, that's a change in culture as well, right? So people are learning to think in open systems without, fixed boundaries or walled gardens. Sylvie, in your company, what kind of technology are you using to serve the needs of your customers? Is there anything in particular?
Sure. I think for us, any type of tech solution that we consider needs to be affordable, first of all. Affordable not only for us, but for, as I said, the chain. But I also loved how Harold put it, the system. If it's not affordable, it's not good. Accessible. It needs to be easy to use. Like, everyone should be able to at least understand the basics, and user-friendly. And again, I want to double down on this. It needs to be farmer-centric. So we've been trying to dive into AI for the juice industry. It's really important that we time the peak of the fruit, because the fruit has Brixes, and if the Brix is really high, then we need to concentrate less when we make a juice, which means less consumption of electricity, less consumption of steam, less greenhouse emissions. So putting the fruit at the factory at the right time really makes a difference. So we've been trying to set up an AI system in which is able to recognize visually the fruit that has the right ripeness. And now we are thinking into rewarding the farmers that are bringing the right fruit at the right time. And this is dangerous again, because again, going back to what we're saying, everything that we're doing in the food system, we should consider the farmer. So for me, it's really important that any of these open source tech solutions consider how are we really supporting farmers. They are the ones doing the hard job. So that's what we're also trying to figure out. It's not about the tech and the system and the platform. It's also about like the human side. Like, are they actually able to even have access to this data? Can they understand it? It's not me telling, hey, the ripeness is not good. Bye. This is what we're paying today. It's more like, can we even communicate this to farmers so they understand it? One of the farmers, he was so smart that he came to us and said, like, if you set up that system in your factory, I would love to invest in drones and use it in my farmland. See, these are the type of things that we want to have, collaboration, but not like, it's not only about saying, hey, it's open source, everyone can read it and have access to it. It's like, I can have access to it, but the reality is you don't understand it. So how are you going to be even interested in this? And that's what we want to do, train farmers around it as well.
That's my next question, by the way. So my next question would have been, how do we get or include the farmers again, right? So as you might know, Europe as a region or a landscape provides 5 to 10%. So continental Europe is 20%. I think the European Union is 5 to 10% of arable land. So Europe plays a significant role in productivity and technology. But then, for instance, in Germany, the number of farms have decreased in 50 years by, I think, from I think 1 million to 250,000. I think that's the number. And my question would be, how do we actually get the people onboarded? That's very interesting. So I completely agree, thinking from farm to fork again, or from farm to plate, as we're called. It starts with the farmer, and the discussion should always start and ideally also end with the farmer and their role. How do you think can we make them use technology in a very smooth way? Because some of them are, technologically less literate or willing to use an app. What's your experience here working with farmers? And how do you think we can successfully onboard them? Maybe Sylvie, you again.
Well, that's the question that doesn't let me sleep, because without the involvement of the farm, we have nothing. I think the first thing that I will say from my experience visiting farms is not only make something accessible, you need to invest time and resources to train the farmer. Second, don't bring tech solutions that are not feasibly sustainable if you are not there. So if you bring something and then you are gone, the farmer should be able to either sustain it financially, I don't know, pay a membership, whatever it is, or if it's open source, even better, but nothing that generates dependency, because that doesn't work. The moment you are not requiring that to the farmer, he will stop using it. So that's my experience. And the third thing is, a lot of people talk about empowerment of farmers. Empowerment starts by paying a fair price. That's when empowerment really starts. So if you don't pay the fair price, this is what we've noticed, don't request extra things from farmers. It's just ethical.
Right. Harold, what do you think? What's your stance on this?
Well, I think at first we need to be a little bit careful what we are saying about the farmer itself. I think at least, of course, depends a little bit on the place in the world we are talking about. And also Europe is heterogeneous. Also the sectors are heterogeneous on technology which is applied. At first hand, I would say farmers are by nature, very clever, I would say. So and most also in our environment are highly educated. So very clever and highly educated people. So that's the status. I think we need to be careful saying, oh, farmers are those guys somehow having no idea about the world and are all day on their field. No, not at all. I think they are highly educated. They know what they're doing and they have a lot of knowledge. And of course, if you're just coming there saying, oh, I have here a great techie thingy, nobody really understands it, but just buy it from me. Well, they will ask, so what's in for me? And of course, when you're going to trade fairs like the Agritechnica here in Germany, which is in November, and you see a lot of farmers which have high interest in all those high tech and all those large machines and so on. And they're applying it to a certain degree, of course. Always the question is, it's also huge investment. And how's the payback of those investments? They're not just buying technology for the sake of technology because they need to earn money with this. They are companies. Every investment needs to pay back. Therefore, I think it's a lot about helping them to understand what's their added value. And of course, we are nowadays talking a lot about sustainability criteria, even in the chain and food production. People are saying, oh yeah, we want to be now more sustainable and our CO2 footprint shall improve. Oh yeah, we're looking at the farms. You're not looking at your production because there's not much in, but you're looking then on the farm and saying, yeah, then please provide me this and that KPI. The question is also for the farmers, they need to understand what's in for them. If they're providing all the data, because it's also effort for them to acquire the data, it's always this little bit chicken and egg problem. So what does it bring and what's the collaboration about? And that's also when the work we are having in the moment in the Data for Food project it's what I said before, the data economy for food systems, where we are asking ourselves, who can really make use of the data? Well, so what is the data economy in the food system? So which data will help whom? And I think there are many different target audiences for the data. On the one hand, the question is where we are getting the data from and what is the target audience? On the one hand, of course, you have farmers who can use data. We have the food processors, we have the traders, we have the wholesalers, we have the retailers. And also, last but not least, we must not forget also the policymakers, because we are talking also there a lot on regulation. And you highlighted in the very beginning on the CAP. And in the last weeks, we had also those decisions for the Supply Chain Act here in Europe, where will come, on the one hand, they're saying, yes, it's specifically for large organizations, but also specifically in the food system. I see a huge impact if this comes through for all the stakeholders in the chain, that they need to provide a lot of data on towards the Supply Chain Act to really enable the larger organizations to report on it, to comply to the legal requirements. And at the very end, and I think we did not yet talk about the consumer. What is really the consumer requiring? And at the very end, what is really the decision base of consumers at the retail side? And I think we did not yet really manage to empower also the consumer to make informed decisions, because it's a heck of a job. So I don't want to blame anybody in the chain or in the networks, because it's a very complicated thing to exchange also the information, specifically if I have processed food. All the ingredients I have in packaged and processed food, and now to collect all the information and put everything in a form that also a consumer can understand this. Sylvie just said, yeah, the farmers need to understand, but also the consumer need to understand. We're talking about now about 4 levels, saying even what here in Germany, even people are getting, a little bit confused. What does it mean? And we have a lot of logos, labels. We have a lot of or possibilities where we are thinking, okay, this might help consumers to take a decision. But at the very end, also there, it's about trust in your retailer.
Right.
You are thinking, oh yeah, if the retailer is saying that's regional, but I had it also. Once I went to a retailer looking for apples and then was standing regional. But it was a region in Germany, which is 600 or 700 kilometers away. So this is for me not really regional at the very end of the day.
And just sorry for interrupting.
Of course.
For goods like beer in Germany, there's the purity law, right? The purity commandment for beer, which is very old, but it's nothing really official. It's like it's an unofficial tradition, more or less, and people trust it, right?
Yeah, well, it's not unofficial. It's also a law, by the way.
It is a law.
If you want to call beer in Germany, you have to follow this law, period. I think there were some small changes, but it's now about how you are allowed to call it in Germany. So, right. But however, and I think it's specifically when we're talking about sustainability, and what also Sylvia already highlighted is about prices. And when we're looking at food waste, if we are looking, for instance, at fruits and vegetables, somehow 50% of fruit and vegetables is lost or wasted. 50%. That's the status today. On the one hand, we are talking about feeding nearly 9 billion people. On the other hand, we are wasting 50% of fruit and vegetables, while a large amount is really lost on the field. Because it's always first we are talking about quality levels of the fruits and vegetables, and then we're talking about the price. Often it's not worth it to harvest it, just that the price is not high enough. So we are here at a kind of in a situation where we need to ask ourselves, how are we treating food? And I think it's also kind of, let's say, basic mindset. It's a kind of industrialization perspective. It's about, let's say, also sustainability perspective. And I think on the other hand, I'm pretty sure that consumers are really willing to pay a lot of money for, let's say, for good food. Because also when we're looking nowadays at retail, I think most, for instance, fruit and vegetables are bought by the look, just looking at it. You don't know how it tastes or what's the texture about. And then suddenly at home you think, oh yeah, looking good, but it doesn't taste. And I think we're still not able really to communicate to the consumers the taste. We also did projects with colleagues from another research institute on hyperspectral cameras, also to understand what is the ripeness. Then other colleagues were looking on the smart trays to monitor the temperature during the transport. Autonomous trays for also communicating this information to use this
Yeah.
data. And then to understand what is the freshness of the food which I'm buying, what is the shelf life. So there are different target audiences on the one hand in the chain that you know about the let's say the freshness, and possibly also what you said, the sweetness, what is with the Brix value or something like that, but also what is then about the properties, possibly if I'm as a consumer saying I want to make a salad in the evening, or I just want to eat the apples or the avocado in 3 or 4 days. So
Yeah.
like an avocado, you can only assess by just opening it or using a hyperspectral camera. Then you know what's the ripeness. But and there are a lot of potentials of the technology. On the other hand, how to bring this really into a process. And then thank you, Sylvie, for highlighting this, that people really understand how it works and it's easy to use. I think there are a lot of challenges still ahead.
So we understand and agree that food is just more than something you put in your mouth, right? So it seems food is indeed culture, and it's a way of life, I assume. Um, one of our last subjects I want to discuss with you today is the EU.
Can I
Like,
just interrupt you before you go into
absolutely.
that? Just want to double down on what Harold said.
Yeah, sure.
Because we are now partnering with is a startup of a very young entrepreneurs. I want to give a shout out to them. Maybe you can Google it later. It's called BMTAC, BMTAC, and they created this solution, this cooling off the grid device that works with solar panels, and we are considering our supply chain. They came to us and they told us this. I remember because I cannot forget it. Around 2 billion people cannot access to vaccines just because there is an insufficient cold chain infrastructure. Just because of that, they cannot access to vaccines. And then they explain me the scenario of how much food waste we are, like it's just incredibly high just because we don't have a cold chain infrastructure in those farms. I have to say, double down on what Harold said. This is a super big topic for us. We're really into this. Like, honestly, I cannot highlight it more. It's super important. We need to solve that issue before we talk about food waste at households. This is where the problem is.
Absolutely. Yeah, I completely agree personally. There's a huge interrelatedness between different industries, right? I mean, food, cosmetics even, right? Cosmetics, foods, the chemical industry, bio industry, food and beverage industry, which makes me think, speaking of the EU Supply Chain Act and the Digital Product Passport, maybe you can start with this, Sylvie. Looking into the next 5 years, what do you see is the future of this project? Where we stand first, or maybe you start with now. What do you feel, and what can you tell us about how successful this endeavor has been already, and what do you foresee in the next 5 years?
That's a good question. I think for us, it's been a little bit of like challenging data collection in some points. What do I see next in because of course we are a B2B company, right? So for us is I want to focus on next 5 years our clients should be able to see this as many of our clients reach out to us because CSRD is coming, the Corporate Social Responsibility Directive. They are preparing, of course, for the first report 2026, and I think this could be one of those advances in the food system that can provide trustworthy information. And so I think what at least our industry is moving towards is like, okay, let's see how we can pilot and test this, at least in some of our ingredients. We are very interested because our portfolio is huge, but some of our ingredients will be interested in testing. I mean, we provide to the big ones, right? Like Unilever, Danone. And I think for us, it's a bit tricky what I've noticed to move. I mean, we wish we would move this more forward, right? But we depend on the fresh market. We are the side stream of veggies and fruit. So we are not really pushing as we want to. I think big responsibility to my colleagues in the big corporations to, yeah, like as Harold also say, there is no standard, and now it's just everyone moving wherever they want to and finding different sources, different startups, different innovations. We would like to see more like, yeah, stability, like what is everyone using, and I think this could be one of those solutions. Yeah.
Right. Carol, what about you? What's been your experience with the digital product passport so far, if any?
Well, experience, not yet so much. However, I think when we're looking at the state of the art, I think when we're looking at retailers, there are already initiatives that they are looking at the chain on collecting KPIs on the chain, collecting also sustainability KPIs because they want to learn what is going on. And also first, my experience in the chain is with whomever I'm talking, they are super sensitive on problems and they have super high, at least also like the retailers, they have very clear demands on pesticides, on potential problems which might affect the farmer. I never talked to anybody who said, oh, I don't take care. No, they're super sensitive. Even, you know, once again, another initiative is going to a retailer, making some laboratory tests, and suddenly, oh, there are pesticides. Usually this happens because there was a problem in the supply chain. Possibly something was not delivered as planned. And then because I would say that usually those stakeholders are very sensitive, super sensitive on the topic. Therefore, I would say, I think the willingness is anyway there and pushed, especially from the consumer and from the retailer side. However, now I think when we're talking about sustainability, new indicators are coming in the game. I think we need to be a little bit careful on how are we implementing this and what is the process on that. I think that is really the challenge. Is it just something for the paperwork that I have now the paper in the shelf? And then saying, oh yeah, now I have the paper on the shelf. Everybody's happy. Nobody's using it, but I have the paper, because I think this was just burning money. And I think to which degree, and that we will see in the next month, years, to which degree the sector is able to make really use out of it. I think we need possibly some regulations. We need to initiate also innovation, because as long as we do not need to collect certain information, I think it's always difficult to be the front runner, because as front runner, usually you have the costs. And then you're possibly hesitating, saying, oh, nobody is doing it. And what's really the payback on that?
Yeah.
It's, you know, it's a little bit the problem on, well, shall I really invest in this money? But I think at the very end of the day, if we really see those potentials and if we're really able to exchange information, I think we see it with all the crisis messages we're getting in the food chain. It's a daily thing that problems are happening. It's nothing rare. It's daily are happening things, not on purpose. It's just happening that problems occur. And traceability can definitely help, especially if we look at the past, that if you had a crisis with some pesticides or bacteria or whatever, then suddenly you're saying, oh, all the salad from Spain. And suddenly everybody in Germany is throwing away the salad from Spain in every supermarket, which is a huge waste for nothing. But it was just 2 fields. But how to make sure to just find the salad from those 2 fields? Because the traceability information is not there. It's just one-to-one traceability. That's the requirement in the moment. If we have more, let's say, information and following that, while that's a huge effort also in intralogistics, specifically on processed food. We must not underestimate that, because usually saying, oh yeah, and then I'm telling you I got it from that supplier. But what is with all the intralogistics? Then we have with processed food, with like if I have a sausage and some pigs, from which pig is this sausage? You're also there, then you have the silo problem. If you're putting everything in a silo, so it's not trivial, the problem. If you're just saying, oh yeah, let's have a law and then let's do it. I think the people are not just ignorant, they also know the challenges and the costs connected to all that. And I think, however, if we see those also on the product passport, if we see on traceability, I think if we could use this also for more added value services, if also the consumers can learn now, and I'm very much convinced that people are willing to pay money for quality. And
Agree.
if I'm getting the information that tomorrow there will be my favorite oranges available in the supermarket around the corner, then I will run there, because certain oranges I'm not buying because usually they don't taste in Germany. I love to eat some in Spain, great, but in Germany I usually don't like them from the taste, because the transport distance, the moment in time when they need to be harvested, and so on and so on. It's also a matter of the situation. But I would be willing to invest or pay more money for the quality. And I think if we are able to master certain challenges, and it's really just a combination of people and technology. Neither one works without the other. It's always both. And I think if you are doing innovations today without technology, I think you will lose opportunities. But if you want to introduce the technology without the people, it's anyway not working. And it's really about trust and willingness, and really that people are joining forces. And I think these are probably the big challenges we need to address then.
So you would agree if I said designing food system from the food up, not from the tech down, is the way forward, yes?
Yeah. It's rather that at first hand, you really need to know what you want. What are I would say the first thing is to identify your objectives. If you don't know what you want, you will do something which will not contribute to your objectives. And you need to, and I think this is a lot about new technologies. Also nowadays, you hear every day AI. But well, it's
That's
not
true.
magic. It's
Yeah.
just technology.
Just
And I think
technology.
you need to do a lot of homework in a company also to make proper usage of AI. You need to have the
Yeah.
proper data. You have to
Agree.
have quality data, and a lot of challenges connected to that.
Right. So
If I can share like a little story, just because even when you want to do something novel, it turned out to be a completely disaster. We introduced biostimulants based on algae in some of our farms. And, a tool like a digital product passport could have helped us so much. This was 2 years ago. And then when it came to processing, and then we went into the blending, we noticed that the quality of the ingredients were completely messed up. And we were wondering, like, what's wrong? Like, we've done everything correctly. Like, this doesn't make any sense. All the farmers use the right fertilization program. And then someone said, like, one farm used this biostimulant based on algae. It messed up our batch completely. And it took us around like 8 weeks to find out which farm was it. So it's just like, even when you want to do something novel, like using a biostimulant that is actually very sustainable, it can impact our ingredient in a bad way that actually we couldn't even sell that batch. But also it's like time consuming, right? So we have very small quality departments and still we couldn't really find it. So I think like one of these tools could really, really benefit us save us time, but it will also bring us, like that efficiency that sometimes we are like lacking because prices are moving so quickly and we're just waiting for this batch there to see what should we do? It's just to share a little experience of how that works in a real business life.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And I would also highlight one thing. All the technology will really help in case of fraud. Because I think up to now, we did not really talk about this topic. I think you will have fraud one way or the other in the chain. And if I'm saying, oh yeah, but I have all the information now in this system, but if you just put wrong information, everything will be processed correctly along the chain with the wrong information. But if you put wrong information, saying like we had this case here in Germany with the horse meat scandal, where there was, well, nothing wrong with horse meat, but well, if you label it as other kind of meat, it's not fair. And but they were just putting the wrong information in the system, even on the label. So what to do then? Then you have everything correct in the technology, but it's just fraud. And what we see, even like with olive oil and stuff like that, you see quite some criminals which are just seeing the food industry as an opportunity of not getting so much threats in terms, well, in getting in jail, because the fines are quite lower to their classical business, what they were doing before. We must not underestimate that. And I think that, of course, I would say that's only a minimum part of the story, but I think we need to be careful that not just believing in technology would help with every, let's say, challenge or problem we might face in the chain. And I think there will be fraud always somehow. And at least we need to be aware also about that.
Yeah. So maybe we make this the last point of discussion for this webinar, talking about fraud and trust, as you also pointed out. What can we do about, how can we increase trust with regards to food, fraud? Maybe Sylvie, you start.
That's a good question. I think, I mean, a digital passport could be the best option, of course, for us. We do, like, this is what I encounter. We do have very complex systems. They are not connected, but we know exactly where every raw material is coming from. It's just like we need to look in different systems, go back to sometimes Excel sheets, and then we know. But in our case, just from my experience, we do have programs of certification with farmers, so that connects us directly to the farmer. And I think in our case, fraud is not such a big deal, to be honest. But of course, we want to prevent fraud. I mean, in some cases, we've seen it, especially with the quality issues. But in the end, we also have an agronomy team who is on the farm, not very efficient, of course. We would like to have a more technified, optimized solution, but we have an agronomy team driving up and down, checking quality in these farms. So challenging, but so far it's not a big issue for us. Of course, we would like to have something better. That's what I want to say. Yeah.
Harold, final remarks, fraud and trust.
Well, I would try to split it. One thing is fraud, where I think technology can also help us to identify that. And like what I said with olive oil, there are even scanners within closed bottle where you can identify if it's the real olive oil or not, which is at least labeled. However, and even technology can help us with certain traceability characteristics and KPI to get a notion what is going on there. Possibly not 100% because, well, not aiming possibly at 100%, but at least a majority. However, there's a potential on this. On the other hand, trust, I think it's also about what I said in the beginning on the balancing of stakeholders, about size of stakeholders, about, let's say, distribution of benefits. And I think it also needs to be clear when we're talking about more information, sharing information and data, who's really sharing the benefit in which way. And I think this is also an initiative towards the data spaces, what is done in the moment at the European Commission level, and having data spaces, because the idea is have even a single European data market, that specifically the data owner or data rights holder is really able to control who's able to access the data and what is done with the data, and how to exploit the results and the benefits. And because data in itself, it's not really valuable. It's rather, if you're processing data, if you're analyzing the data, you can really generate value out of it. And therefore, I think it's really something step by step we need to understand, specifically the information exchange between organizations. And I think that's very important, because inside an organization is anyway not the problem to use the data, possibly technically, but not so much on the trust perspective. But between organizations, you have the huge problem on how you are handling the trust and exploiting that. And I think that is something where you really need to empower somehow data owners to help them to understand what is going on with their data. I think it started already, and it's really an effort which is in the moment worked on. And I think we still have quite a way to go to give also best practice examples on this, how it could be done, and what would be pathways in organizational as well as technical terms, I would say.
Fantastic remarks. I completely agree. Before we split, because we reached our effective time, it's almost 1 sharp. If we have any questions from the audience, we take them now. If not, I would like to thank the audience, you guys, Sylvie and Harold, and also Farm2Plate, who made this webinar happen, very much for your attention. And I wish everyone a great day and a great weekend ahead. And I hope to see you guys, hopefully also in the real life very soon.
Alex, thank you very much for organizing this and moderating. It was a pleasure talking to you.
Same, likewise.
And
See you soon.
Sylvie, thank you very much
Thank you,
also for your
everyone.
insights.
Thank you, everyone.
Good. See you soon, guys. Bye-bye.
Yeah, thank you.